Imagine if you will, and I talk like this in front of people. I cry like this in front of with the crowd. Imagine if you will a childhood that's so bad of being beat, of being neglected, that rape was a pleasure. I know that sounds bad. Dick and Hank moved in next door to us. I don't know how old Hank was. I know that he had to have been in his late 20s. Dick was early, older, written name's Richard. By today's category, they were a couple. Us boys didn't know that. Hank had been in the railroad, had been coupling or uncoupling some cars, and they slipped and they smashed him. And they ripped most of his buttocks off, the cheeks, the muscle. And Hank would laugh at him. And Hank would make him show us, or Hank would be changing the bandages and make us boys watch. And of course, to us, that was gross. I mean, it was terrible. Well, Hank, it didn't take long for anybody that was in the neighborhood to know what my mother thought of me. My mother would drag me out on the front porch, or she'd beat me in the house, and I don't know, 60, 80 pounds, and she's throwing me around like a sack of potatoes and beating me and stuff, and then she'd get mad and she'd throw me out on the front porch and continue there if she could. Well, of course, the neighbors saw that. And this is me rationalizing in my mind, okay? I don't know how Dick thought, or Hank. Dick was kind of like reserved, but he was kind of like in my mind, catch-22. Him and Hank were an couple, but he was dependent on Hank. And then Hank didn't respect him. One day my mom threw me out on the porch and was coming after me. And I'm trying to crawl away from her, as I'd done so many times. There's so many visions in my head when I was a kid that I was crawling up a gravel driveway in the orchard, or a gravel driveway in the hops. And my mom's standing over me and she's kicking me into the ground. I have fallen in gravel today and I feel every pebble like I was a kid. And she'd kick me on the porch, and Hank had said something to her. And Hank had said something to her, and she kicked me off the porch, and she said, "Take him. I don't want him." She wrote Hank a check that day. She threw me to the wolves. Hank took me to his house next door. And at first it was, consoling me, hugging me. As a boy, I never knew that. I only been hugged a couple of times in my life. So I'm seeing attention. Nobody ever touched me. And then, of course, his hands traveled. First to my back, and then between my legs. And then when I tried to push him away, he beat me like my mother did. And I was shocked. Nobody had touched me other than my mother that way. Hank beat me that day and slammed me against the wall and raped me. I'm 11 years old. And Hank would rape me several more times over several months. And everything that came with it. forced me to have oral with him, forced me to try to do things which I didn't understand. When I tried to tell my mother, she knocked me out of the house and laughed at me and told me I was a little bitch and I would never deserve anything better. And for a lot of years, I thought that. By the time I was 11, my body had been violated and broken so many ways. I didn't care. I didn't care anymore.